Good evening and welcome to the interim board meeting of the Board of School Directors of the School District of Springfield Township for Wednesday, September the 1st. And if we could all stand for the Pledge of Allegiance, please. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Okay, good evening. A reading of the mission statement, Ms. Lipinski.
The mission of the School District of Springfield Township is to educate and develop all students as learners and citizens who are high achieving, resilient, and responsible in a changing global community.
Thank you. Roll call, Ms. Michaels.
Mr. Bedard.
Here.
Mr. DeFranco.
Here.
Dr. Etlin.
Here.
Ms. Jordan. Mr. Lapidus.
Here.
Mr. Needleman.
Here.
Ms. Sarsfield. Ms. Lipinski.
Here.
Dr. Taratusky.
Here. Announcements. The board, at its discretion, may videotape all or any portion of public board meetings subject to the limitations set forth in Policy 006.2, broadcasting of meetings. Board meetings will be broadcast on Friday afternoon following the board meeting. At this time, we'll have public comments on agenda items only. I just want to remind you that this is a comment period. If you choose to make a comment, please use the hand raise feature and you'll be called on. And when you are called on, if you could please state your name as you and where you live in the township. And again, this is for items that are currently on our agenda this evening. Okay. Ms. Banks.
Hi, can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay, great. Sorry, didn't want to have a repeat of last time. Thanks again. How are you all this evening? I just had a question, comment. I'm on, board doc. I'm trying to follow along with the policy section. And I'm, I click on each agenda item and then I click on the details and then it references the book. Policy manual. Is that the PSBA policy manual? Is that a Springfield Township policy manual? Because when the hyperlinks aren't hyperlinks, so then I have to Google these things, and then it takes me back to the Springfield Township Google Drive, which just repeats what's already in the PDF. Sorry, my children are resisting bedtime. And so I'm just having a hard time trying to read everything that the little footnote hyperlinks are referencing. Is there a way to make this easier or to make the hyperlinks active in future documents just so I can have a better idea of what I'm getting when I'm trying to read or what's happening here? It's just a little hard to get through.
The attachments that are in board docs are the attachments of the policy that we're reviewing.
Right. And then, and so then, for example, just for the very first one, authority, that first paragraph, and you have those two little hyperlinks, 1 and 2. How do we make that easier for someone to access what that text is?
I'm actually not sure what you're asking. I'm looking at the policy and it is there, and that's the footnote. It's posted on the website. Kara or Dr. Yannicone, do you have any? I'm not quite sure what the concern is, actually. I'm sorry. I apologize. I'm just trying to figure that out. So.
I believe that 1 and 2 are referencing the legal notes at the beginning of that document. So they're not actually hyperlinks out.
No,
Ms. Banks.
Right.
They're referring back to the top.
The code.
Okay.
Public
and
school.
So then I would just have to Google that code separately.
Yes.
Is there a way to make that easier, or say, to reference these documents go here. It's a lot of legwork when the agenda's out. I mean, just for people that have a lot, full-time kids, it's just so I understand everything that's happening, and the language just can be a little thick for people, just for regular people. Is there a way to make it easier for us to understand what's happening?
As Mr. Bedard said, those are references to the state code, the school code.
So it's the state code, not the policy manual.
Code. Right, it's the school code. So that would be found on the PDE website.
So which website was that?
The Pennsylvania Department of Education.
Okay. And so all of the footnotes are referencing to that website, or the various documents, do they all reference back to the same website?
If you look at, if it says legal, then that is the code, the section of the Pennsylvania education code that it references.
Okay, and then the policy manual is the PSBA policy?
The policy manual is the Springfield Township School Policy Manual, and the policies are based on information that's given to us from PSBA, who helps us to do our legal research.
Okay. All right. Thank you. It's just trying to figure it all out. Thank you very much.
Sure. You're welcome. Thank you.
Yeah, I just want to know, I think that's a fair comment. I'm making it very easy to understand where the references go. So I'll ask Dr. Yannicone to just make sure, let's try and make things as clear and easy as possible, but there's no intent there to obfuscate any information. It's just referencing back to those codes.
And Dr. Tartusky, may I interject?
Sure.
Just to clarify, the body in the PDF is what's being voted on, not the references. The body is derived from the references, but what we are voting on is what is provided in the PDF files. And
yes,
so you don't really need to,
Yep. Yep. And, as we are moving to board docs with our policy manual, since everything is becoming electronic, that is something that we can always look into in terms of hyperlinking those code associations. That's totally fine. So, okay.
Can I jump in for one more thing too?
Sure.
Because they're drafts that we're reviewing. I'm looking actually at our website, and the board policies on our website have a sidebar that has the actual section of the school code in it. So I would think once we approve these PDFs, we'll be putting them more in our format that we have of the voted on ones on our website.
Yes. And all of those will be migrated to board docs at some point. Is that correct, Dr. Yannicone? Okay.
Yes, that's correct. And just two other quick mentions. This is the first reading.
Yeah.
So there were several readings of each policy, and a great way for members of the community to get involved is to attend policy committee, because as we're reviewing the entire policy manual this year with PSBA, that's where we'll be bringing policies for discussion. So these are the 000 section policies. We're just at the start of that review.
Thank you.
Great. Thank you.
Okay. Mary Ellen Reeves.
Good evening. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Good evening. I hope everyone is staying safe and dry. Mary Ellen Reeves, Station Avenue, North Hills. Just to piggyback off of Ms. Banks's comment, I too had some difficulty, and I have a background in software and IT, and I've had some difficulty, accessing information. I'm a full-time working woman, so I wanted to, further articulate her point, but I also wanted to follow up on the question I asked last time on how do we access the Academic Affairs Committee meeting addressing discussion specifically regarding the second step curriculum. The last time I asked about this, Dr. Van Born did address my question, and she kindly sent me an email. I see your agenda is posted for May 3rd addressing K-5 social and emotional learning. And I'm sure with the professionals on this board that the curriculum is rigorously debated. However, I'm just having some difficulty finding where that information is and the recording of it. Is this in fact public information? Are we privy to this debate on curriculum? Because again, I'm having difficulty accessing any information online.
So we do post the minutes of our committee meetings, and those should be online.
I do have that. Yes, thank you, from May 3rd. But do you have the actual debate? Where can I find that? I mean, a curriculum, let's face it.
Debate? We don't typically debate at those meetings. That would have been a presentation by the administration and then a question and answer period. So there's not a minute by minute accounting of whatever that conversation was. You are welcome. And Mary Ellen, I just want to I want to address your question, absolutely. But I also want to note that this comment period is for items that are currently on our agenda. And so I will answer your question at this time, but the second step program is not on this agenda this evening. And we will be having another academic affairs committee meeting. I'm not sure when that is scheduled. Dr. Yannicone, do you have a date for an academic affairs committee meeting coming up?
Late September. Dr. Johnson, the exact date. She's the chair of the committee.
September 20th, Monday, September 20th.
Okay, Monday, September 20th would be the next academic affairs committee meeting. I
What
don't
time?
know. It's Dr. Johnston. What time is that meeting?
I believe we put it at 5 o'clock, but let me just check the time. I knew the date off the top of my head. I think at 5 o'clock.
Thank you, Dr. Johnston. And with all due respect, Dr. Taratuski, I appreciate that you have an agenda here, but again, to piggyback off of what Ms. Banks has asked, I'm just having difficulty finding this information, and I am computer savvy, and I know that you're doing your very best to educate the students of Springfield Township. However, I have some specifics that haven't been addressed or answered, and I would just like to find that information. And I'm sure there's several parents that would probably be in the same position that I am in. So thank you tonight for your information, and I look forward to your upcoming meeting. Thank you very much.
Thanks, Ms. Reeves. Okay, and again, I just want to remind anyone who is planning to speak that this is on the items that are on the agenda. There will be an opportunity at the end of the meeting to speak on broader topics that may be of interest to the board or to the community. Okay, Madeline or Julian Watson.
Yes, I'm here. Hello.
Okay. Can you state where you live in the township, please?
Yes, I live on Cromwell Road in Winmore, Pennsylvania. I have 3 students in Erdenheim, Enfield, and the Springfield Township Middle School. I am very concerned because I received multiple communications about masking and different things. I understand this is about power and authority.
I'm sorry, Mrs. Watson, I'm going to ask you that you hold this comment. If it's not on an item that's on our current agenda, I'm just going to ask that you hold it until the comment period at the end of our meeting, where it's on general items, non-agenda items.
I can
speak
Thank you. On the current topics, I can speak on them.
Okay, do you have a copy of the agenda?
Yes, they're on power and authority, correct?
I'm sorry, that's a policy. Yes, that's a policy. So if it's on the policy of authority and powers, if that's what, do you have a question about that policy, or do you have a comment rather about the policy?
I do.
Okay.
Do they have anything to do with vaccinations?
Okay. If the policy does not cover vaccinations, the policy is about the authority and power of the board and the district. So if you have a question, or rather a comment, I'm sorry, about the policy, we're happy to take that now. If you have questions about masking or vaccinations, then I'm going to ask you to hold on to that until the second comment period.
Okay, is a comment regarding the authority of implementing curriculum a topic here?
That is not on the agenda at this point.
The agenda was very vague. So would you mind explaining that to me and everyone else who's listening so that we can comment?
Okay, the policy, the agenda is on board docs, and the items that are currently being discussed at this meeting, there are some items under academic affairs, foreign exchange students. There are some items on the agenda regarding policies. There are 5 policies that are up for an initial reading. There's
And what are they?
They're on the agenda. And if you
I know,
can,
I downloaded the agenda.
Okay.
They weren't available.
Okay, they are linked to the agenda. And if you use the link that's in the chat, it should take you to the agenda itself, which has a link in it to all of the policies.
They were linked to the agenda just as much as the equity that you guys took for $2 million was linked to the safe implementation of students going back to school. So sorry if I don't see exactly what you meant. I've read this over many times today.
Okay. If you have a comment that you'd like to make related to any of the items on the agenda, we're happy to hear it. Otherwise, I'm happy to have you speak at the end of the meeting.
Well, I know there are many parents who do not understand what it is that you're trying to address today because you put it up at the last minute intentionally. So can you please address to the people that are listening right now what we are to comment on? And I'm sure I will have a comment.
Okay. The agenda is on board docs.
Well, I can't exactly look that up right now.
The link is in the chat.
Just so I couldn't look up the $2 million that you took to
the link is in
put
the link
racially divisive material into the curriculum, affecting my children.
Mrs. Watson, I'm going to ask that you hold your comment.
And I will ask that you describe to your constituents what exactly this board meeting is about.
The agenda is on board docs. And I'm going to ask that it is on board docs, and all of the items there that are to be discussed are attached to the board docs listing. And at this point, I'm going to move forward and so that we can proceed with our meeting.
They're not there.
If you have a question,
my comments were erased from your YouTube.
I'm sorry, it's on board docs. And I'm going to need to move forward now to the agenda. Okay. All right. Thank you very much. Okay. I'm going to move to the second item on the agenda.
Sorry, Dr. Taratuski, we do have one other comment.
We have one other comment. Okay. Can you tell me who that is? I'm sorry, I'm monitoring the.
You got it. Ms. Kathy Trinkle.
Okay, thank you.
Hold on. Am I unmuted now?
You're good.
Yes, you are,
yes.
Ms. Trinkle. Thank you.
Thank you so much. My room is extremely loud because it is pouring outside, so you can hear me. So I'm from Flowertown. I want to follow up on what Madeline was just saying. I think she's very emotional, and so I just want to follow up on what she said. I believe she is concerned that the policy that states authority and powers is a underlying statement that's going to basically give you guys the power to allow children to be vaccinated without their parental consent. I can't imagine it's exactly what she meant, but we spoke earlier, and that is one of her concerns. So I would just like to clear that through, that's why she is concerned that's what it states. I read through it several times, and I had a really hard time I also have a degree. I only got to this today because I do work full time. And I read it over and over and over again. And honestly, I couldn't really decipher what this authority and powers really kind of means. So I just want to reiterate about when a child is given a medication, a parent needs to be informed. And you need to have informed consent for any medication that's given a child. So even though it may not be on the agenda, I just do want to make that abundantly clear that no child should be offered that vaccine at a school without consent. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mrs. Trinkle. I appreciate your comments. Thanks. Okay. And actually, I am going to, since we've had some questions about the policies that are on the agenda, I'm actually going to ask our solicitor, Mr. Berman, if he would provide a description for our community of why we have these policies on the agenda and what that process is for policy adoption. So Kyle, could you do that?
Sure, thank you. So first of all, can you hear me okay?
Yes, we can, thanks.
Great. All right, so I want to deal first of all with this one particular policy, which is the authority and powers policy. It's essentially a restatement of the authority given to a school district through the school code. It simply establishes that the district acts through its board, and that the board has the authority to take certain actions based upon those statutes that are in the school code. As far as the other pieces that are in here, it really is just laying the framework and the foundation for what it is that the board is expected to be doing on a regular basis, how it functions, who's supposed to be on the board. It's the very basic pieces of how you are supposed to be operating, which is why the 00 section of the policy manual is generally designated as board functions. So what you're doing by approving them is essentially bringing yourself in line with the policies that PSBA is recommending that you have that establish that foundation and make it so that somebody can look to see when they're either running for the board, when they're on the board, when they want to understand the extent of the authority of the board. They can really look to see what's there. There are various ways that these are implemented in different school districts. These are the policies as they're written for Springfield. And I gather that PSBA took the existing policies that did the same sorts of things for Springfield and put them into the format that PSBA generally recommends. So it's not really that you're giving yourself any new powers. All that you're probably doing here is giving yourself the powers that the school code already gave you in the form that you previously adopted for yourselves.
Thank you, Mr. Berman. We appreciate that.
You're very welcome.
Okay. There are two more comments, and I want to stress that these should be on items that are currently on the agenda. And there's someone listed as AD. Could you please state your full name for the board meeting and let us know where you're from in the township? And you can unmute because we can't hear you. Okay.
Dr.
All right.
Tartakovsky, I believe they lowered their hand. So
Okay, thank you. All right, that's great. Mrs. Watson, I do see your hand again. And at this point, if you have a question that's on the agenda items, I'm happy to, or comment, I'm sorry, that's on the agenda items, I'm happy to allow you to make that comment right now. If it's not on an agenda item, then I'm going to ask you to please wait until the comment period at the end of the board meeting.
No problem. I just want to understand what your definition is between power and authority.
Mrs. Watson, this is not a question and answer period. It's a comment period. And if you have a comment on it, Mr. Berman, I believe, gave a description of the reason for these policies and what the policies cover. We will be voting on those later on in the meeting. If you have a comment regarding them, you can share that comment right now, but it's not a question and answer period.
Okay, you post the agenda with a very limited time for people to read it and understand it. And there's a very different definition between power and authority. Power is something that anyone can conjure up in their own ideology. Authority is something that you are granted as a police officer is with their authority to actually arrest you. Power is the authority to say to a child, yes, you should believe this and not your parents. So I want to know what the school board's definition between power and authority is. And those are the only things that I believe any of us parents are aware of the school board agenda today because of your lack of informing us of the agendas. And so I ask again, what is this about? What is your definition of power versus authority? And how are you implementing them on my children?
Ms. Watson, you're welcome to read a copy of the policy regarding authority and powers, which is policy 00.2. And if, I'm sorry, Mrs. Watson, hold on one second. What I'd like to have someone do, if you are able to put your email in the chat, we will have someone email you a copy of the policy and or put copies, links to the copies of the policy in the chat so that you can review them. Okay.
I have
and if you have any,
policy.
okay, then if you have any further comments, that's fine. We can hear them. Otherwise, we're going to move on with the agenda, and you're welcome to speak again at the end of the meeting.
Okay, just one more question, and then I will.
This is not a question and answer period. I'm sorry. It is a comment period. We're happy to hear your comments, and I understand that you.
My comment is that I do not consent to any of my children going into school and giving a vaccine.
Okay, thank you. Thank you. I appreciate hearing that.
Thank you.
And Dr. Tarantowski, I just wanted to enter for the official record, and Mr. Berman can clean this up, but powers and authorities is a term of legal art that is essentially assigned to governance. And Springfield Township School District has not defined specifically powers or authorities inconsistent with what would be normally applied to governance.
Thank you. Thanks. Okay. All right, let's move forward with the agenda this evening. And first we have reports and information. I see there's an item on there, Dr. Yannicone, we're moving that one to our September 14th meeting. Okay, so the next item would be property committee report. Mr. Needleman, can you share that? Thanks.
Thank you, Dr. Tarantowski. On Tuesday, August 24th at 8 o'clock, the property committee met. There were several things under discussion. I'm going to run through them. There are about 6. As I look through my notes, I'll try and do this as briefly as I can. Can everybody hear me okay? And am I coming through? My apologies. We're having a little bit of lights flickering and all the rest of it. So if I bow out, it's not because I'm wanting to leave the meeting. It's because the electricity went. So
understood.
Give me ahead of time.
Thank you.
First on the hit parade is an update on the old Enfield property. Thankfully, the township has granted its approval for the project to move forward. So the raising the school will begin fairly soon, probably around November or so. There has been some interest in the community, and there will be more on this that will be broadcast to members of the community and probably outside the community as well. If anybody wants to take a final look at the school, maybe get a keepsake from the school, a brick, something like that, and that process will be fleshed out and it'll be communicated to the community as it develops some more specificity. We're just not quite there yet. All of that said, the schedule for the new fields to be up and running is still on target for an August 2022 date. Fortunately, we missed the spring of 2022, but we had missed that some time ago. So we're thankfully still on track for that August 2022 deadline or projection, I guess. It's really not quite a deadline. In terms of our summer work or the summer projects that have been underway and have been completed, the high school auditorium has new carpeting and interior painting. We have installed county emergency call buttons at the high school and at the middle school and at all the schools, actually. There have been additional AEDs, defibrillators, at all of the buildings. So there have been 9 that have been installed. The LED lights that I'm sure folks see outside the high school on People Mill Road, and that one most primarily has been upgraded. And the new signage, I saw just yesterday, the finishing touches were being put on it. So that should be up and running soon. There's also at the high school main entrance a new electronic message board, and a new concrete sidewalk has been installed at the front entrance area of the middle school. We're moving forward with a traffic signal for the new Enfield school that we're waiting right now, or the township, I should say, is waiting right now for PennDOT approval of those plans. Because we're waiting for that approval, there's no schedule when that'll be up and running at this time, but it's all moving ahead. We're all, parents, teachers, administrators, everybody, we're all waiting for school to open and preparing for that. To that end, the schools have all been cleaned and sanitized, furniture's in place, that piece of it is ready to go. The HVAC systems have all been cleaned and new air filters installed. Staff members and students will have an ample supply of PPE. I knew I was going to mess that up, sorry. PPE items for the start of the year. So we're squared away as far as that goes. Now on to as I'm looking at my list, onto the stuff that is the news that is less good, but frankly apropos given what we're all dealing with tonight. There was a lot of storm damage to the turf field on the 19th. There's been a lot of damage to it today, but we don't know exactly what the extent of that is. From the 19th, the playing surfaces are going to have to be rolled out again. We're going to have to figure something out in terms of going forward, how to manage that piece, whether we need to do some work on the drainage system, whether we maybe need to replace pieces of the field, that sort of thing. But that's all underway, and Mr. Thorne and his staff and his crew are taking care of that as we speak, frankly, as we speak. And so we'll have more to come on that. Rooftop HVAC equipment has been upgraded and will now be doing, I gotta make sure I get this right, bipolar ionization cleaning. What that means is that the air in each of the school buildings will be cleaned with, I hope nobody asks exactly how this works because I don't know, I'll have to defer to somebody else, but it's essentially cleaned by positively and negatively ionized molecules that clean the air of any contaminants, including viruses and things like that. So although it may not be foolproof, it's going to be really, really clean, and it's the best available technology that we've got. With that, I will thank you and go back on mute. That concludes my property report.
Thanks, Mr. Needleman. That's a lot of science there that you needed to digest, but we appreciate the report and
Happy to
have a good
hope
evening.
I conveyed that sort of okay. Anyway,
Yeah,
thank you.
yeah, that's great. Thank you. Okay. All right, so we'll move on to administrative reports. Superintendent's report, Dr. Yannicone.
Thanks, Dr. Taratuski. Good evening, everyone. I hope everyone is safe and well and weathering the storms tonight. I know our administrative team is very appreciative that we were able to hold tonight's meeting in a virtual format. I hope it made it more accessible to the public. We're currently experiencing flooding on the campus and in several of our buildings tonight. And Mr. Thorne is there now addressing what he can. We'll have an update for the community as needed once we've assessed things tomorrow. And I just have a few items tonight from my report. First of all, some good news around attendance. Each year, the district has to report the average daily attendance across our 4 schools. And as a district, in 1819, students attended 96.17% of the time, an outstanding degree of commitment by our families and their students. In 1920, which was the first year of the pandemic, our attendance improved to 96.48%, quite an accomplishment, given again that year ended with the beginning of the pandemic. Last year, many districts were uncertain whether students and families would continue to participate fully in hybrid learning, but here in Springfield, our students excelled with a final rate of attendance of 96.51%. So 3 years in a row, we've had steady improvement. Our students at Enfield and Erdenheim attended over 97% of the time, and at the middle and high schools, over 95%. In a full year of the pandemic, this is a tribute to our students, their families, and the teachers, staff, and administrators who encouraged, engaged, and challenged them in the classroom, whether we were in virtual or in person. So I want to thank everyone for that. Secondly, in the area of transportation, last Wednesday, Mr. Bray emailed all families with information on bus routes for the new year. He continues to troubleshoot and respond to questions from families. Through our new online registration process, we've received just under 1,800 responses to our survey question regarding ridership. Thus far, about 61% of families intend to ride the bus, 13% will walk, and 24% will be driven by car in the morning. This is important information for our transportation office and schools so that we can accurately prepare for enrollment on the buses and car line duties. So we encourage all families who haven't yet completed the online registration, not new registration, but just updating your information. If you can do that, that's very helpful to us. In the area of food services, as you may be aware, the school district is providing free meals to students for the 21-22 school year with grant funding support. Even though free meals are being provided to students, the district is encouraging those families who may be eligible to submit a free or reduced price meal application for tracking purposes in the event additional food or meal benefits become available by local or governmental agencies. For additional information on this process, you can visit our district's website. You select food service under departments, and you'll get information on signing up for free and reduced lunch. If you are eligible, or if you have any questions, please feel free to call our offices, and we'll be happy to answer your questions. With regard to vaccination rates, we continue to receive updates from our registration system for both student and staff vaccination rates. With about 367 staff responses, we're holding steady at 96% vaccinated. For students, we have nearly all online updates completed by families. And for those of age to receive the vaccine, about 80% have reported that their student is vaccinated. These rates well exceed local and county rates overall, and we're very grateful to our families and staff for making a positive difference in the safety of our school community. And finally, we have our Spartan Spotlight tonight. Through the summer months, our administrative team has worked with the Office of Teaching and Learning to review assessment data to evaluate and analyze the progress of our students in core skills in reading and math. Dr. Johnston has prepared a presentation on student achievement as tonight's Spartan Spotlight. And so I'll turn it over to her.
Thank you, Dr. Yannicone. I'm going to go ahead and share my screen. Can you confirm that you can see that for me? Great, thank you so much. I appreciate being here this evening. Good evening, Board of School Directors and our community, families, staff. One of the things Dr. Yannicone and I have shared with the community in these Spartan Spotlights is the idea of how our students are doing in multiple ways. 2 weeks ago, we shared information about their summer and the options we were able to provide. And this evening, we're happy to provide information. We're looking forward to providing information about their academic performance and what we're able to know as a result of the pandemic so far. Oops. In preparing for this evening's presentation, I found this quote. Pedro Noguera is an instructor and a professor in California. His quote, "I'm less interested in standardized tests used to rank kids and more interested in assessments to diagnose learning needs." And this quote perfectly forms the way in which our administrative team and school district is investigating student performance following the in the midst of the pandemic. What we're hoping to do this evening is to make sure that we shared with you the recognition that we have about how students are performing broadly, create purposeful actions and share them with you as we address learning and target learning needs, and that we work with our building principals on initiatives and focusing on specific academic interventions and priorities. As I shared with you the last time I was here to speak about achievement, we continue to use our MTSS, multi-tiered systems of support, to look at students broadly. No one measure, no one interview, no one observation is sufficient to talk about student needs. Instead, it's the holistic view of a student's profile, including performance observations by their teachers and families, that help us to understand student needs. And so tonight's presentation is looking specifically at one measure of reading and mathematics as a baseline for where we are right now. As Dr. Yannicone spoke about, we continue to look at curriculum performance, behavioral performance and discipline, as well as attendance as a holistic view of student engagement in their learning. I want to orient you to the information that you're looking at. This is cohort performance. Cohorts are the same group of children over multiple years. So along the bottom are their graduation years. So starting all the way to the left of the slide is the graduation class of 2033, going up to the graduating class of 2044. We only administered these assessments to grades K through 10 last year. Unfortunately, our 10th graders, only about 54 of them took the measure, so I took them off. It was not a full representation of their performance. 10th graders are high school students and apparently exceeded their will and how they felt about these assessments. 1920 is in blue, which is prior to the pandemic, and the gray is following the pandemic. This measure was administered in June of 2021. Overall, what you will see is that students have demonstrated some dip in their performance from prior to the pandemic. So students in fourth grade are performing consistently prior to the pandemic and after, but in most of the other grades, you'll see a variation. National averages are suggesting that students have had an impact in performing 9% below where they were before. In reading and math, what we found was that they're functioning across the board about 7% lower than they were before. And while that is concerning and something we want to target, it is at least less than the national average in that area. And we continue to look at ways that we can address it. There was almost no change for fourth graders and seventh graders in reading. So those students who were in those two grades performed as well as they did prior to the pandemic. Across the average performance of all cohorts, prior to the pandemic, 75% of our students performed at or above a benchmark in reading and language arts. Following the pandemic, or at the close of 2021, 67% were performing at or above the benchmark. As a result, we saw some increase in those students who are performing below or well below the benchmark. Prior to the pandemic, that was at 12% of all students who took this test. Again, we administer this assessment to all students who attend Springfield Township schools, including those who are gifted and those with disabilities. So they are factored into these numbers. At the close of 2021, 18% of the students were performing below or well below the benchmark. Again, we saw an increase of 6% students who are having more difficulty with reading than we had seen in the past. In mathematics, we've had a little different trend. We saw a change, but that was a little bit different. 85% prior to the pandemic were performing at or above benchmark. At the close of last spring, 76% of our students were performing at or above the benchmark. Again, we saw a 9% drop in performance. Nearly no change again for 4th and 7th graders. For 7th graders. 4th, 5th, and 6th graders in mathematics noted the most significant change in mathematics. While I have no specific details, my best hypothesis about that is we begin to introduce much more abstract mathematics, and many learners were learning in a more virtual format throughout the last year, may or may not have impacted their acquisition of those abstract mathematics skills. So we'll be looking at that more closely this year. And finally, that demonstrates for you that prior to the pandemic, 8% of our overall student body was performing below or well below the benchmark. And at the close of last spring, 15%. So we saw increases again in those students who are performing below the benchmark. The greatest concern was again for grades 5 and 6. So that data is numbers. They aren't student stories. There's reasons why lots of students may or may not have performed as well as they had before. And so one of the things that Dr. Yannicone and I were able to do this summer is meet with each of the building administrative teams and talk about specifically at each building what patterns and trends we noticed and strengths and needs. We asked them some guiding questions about the kinds of data they use as a building administration, to what they're looking at and how that forms their understanding of student performance. Specifically, what are the data sets that we examine and what are the steps that they plan to take to address the concerns or their focus areas with their students and staff. Each building team shared with us a review of their findings and areas of strength and need. At Enfield and Erdenheim, they're primarily targeting those students who are below and well below grade level with evidence-based interventions and supports. We have had a long-standing intervention program in reading at the K-5 level. They're going to continue to do that and provide those services. And this year we should be, because we're able to be in person for the whole year, the interventions will more readily align to the practices with fidelity, meaning being able to do small group instruction, pulling them out of their classroom and targeting particular necessary underlying skill development. Social emotional well-being, making sure, just like the research in our national reporting has shared, concerns around students' mental health and interactions with other children, particularly the youngest students who may or may not have had a lot of social interaction over the last few years during the pandemic, making sure we're targeting, helping students develop solid interaction skills with one another. Continuing to look at the way we intervene with mathematics and providing math intervention and working with the Montgomery County IU to examine possible resources we could add to our toolkit to support those students who need it. And finally, continuing to engage students in their own personal learning goals and helping students understand that when they have areas of need, that doesn't necessarily suggest there's something wrong, but instead, how can they prioritize and work on getting better at those skills? At the middle school and high school, as has been well shared with our community, they're adding time for additional supports in reading, math, and other areas of student need through their new flex programs. Targeting and providing that support and making sure that students have access to a variety of options to help them acquire skills either with their teachers or with their instructors, as well as independent projects and other activities. That's building on the idea of using student voice and agency, where students express their own sense of ownership for their learning. Again, at the middle and high school, focusing on social emotional well-being and peer relationships. Some of our students have not been inside the building for 18 months, bringing them back in together and focusing on opportunities to interact with one another. And again, focusing on personal learning goals. This year, we're also we will continue, as we have in the past, to administer this universal screening measure, which is we use the STAR 360 between K and 11th grade this year. We'll administer them 3 times in the fall, winter, and spring. excuse me, will target foundational skills. And again, we have set a goal for ourselves at 80% or more to be meeting or exceeding our benchmark, putting us back where we were prior to the pandemic. We've created district and building goals to increase student performance. We're examining new patterns and impact of our actions and making sure that we are thinking about ways in which we can meet student need. Again, we look forward to bringing back to this school board and to our community updates quarterly on how we're doing and what we're finding after the assessment period has happened, not only with academic performance, but also attendance and social emotional well-being and discipline. I appreciate your time this evening and for having me. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Dr. Johnston. We really appreciate hearing about all the efforts to support our students and look forward to seeing the progress that they make this year.
Thank you.
All right, let's move on to human resources, personnel. The Board of School Directors approves the following personnel as presented in the attachment: administrative personnel, certificated personnel, support personnel, temporary personnel, COVID compensatory services personnel, extended school year program personnel, extra pay for extra responsibilities for 2021-2022, and conference workshop attendance. Is there a motion?
Motion.
And a second?
Second.
Any comments or questions? Okay, Ms. Michael?
Mr. Bedard,
Aye.
Mr. DeFranco,
Aye.
Dr. Edlin,
Aye.
Mr. Lapidus,
Aye.
Mr. Needleman,
Aye.
Ms. Lipinski,
Aye.
Dr. Taratusky.
Aye. Okay, the next item is a foreign exchange student. The Board of School Directors approves a foreign exchange student from Italy for the 2021-2022 school year. Is there a motion? Motion?
Yeah, motion.
Okay, and a second?
Second.
Any comments or questions? Okay, Ms. Michaels?
Mr. Bedard,
Aye.
Mr. DeFranco,
Aye.
Dr. Edlin,
Aye.
Mr. Lapidus,
Aye.
Mr. Needleman,
Aye.
Ms. Lipinski,
Aye.
Dr. Taratusky.
Aye. Okay. The next item is another foreign exchange student. The Board of School Directors approves a foreign exchange student from Spain for the 2021-2022 school year. Is there a motion?
Motion.
And a second?
Second.
Any comments or questions? Okay, Ms. Michael?
Mr. Bedard,
Aye.
Mr. DeFranco,
Aye.
Dr. Edlin,
Aye.
Mr. Lapidus,
I say C in honor of the student.
Mr. Needleman,
Aye.
Ms. Lipinski,
Aye.
Dr. Taratusky.
Aye. Gracias, Mr. Lapidus.
De nada. Maybe we can have an entire conversation in Spanish from this point forward.
Okay,
What do you think?
that's too challenging. We're gonna move. We're gonna
It'll
move
only be a
on.
change of pace, huh?
Yes. All right, and the next section is regarding policy. The Board of School Directors approves the first reading of policy 000, Board Policy Procedure Administrative Regulations, as recommended by PSBA. Is there a motion?
Motion.
And a second?
Second.
Any comments or questions? Okay. Ms. Michaels?
Mr. Bedard,
Aye.
Mr. DeFranco,
Aye.
Dr. Edlin,
Aye.
Mr. Lapidus,
Aye.
Mr. Needleman,
Aye.
Ms. Lipinski,
Aye.
Dr. Taratusky.
Aye. The next is the Board of School Directors approves the first reading of policy 002, authority and powers, as recommended by PSBA. Is there a motion?
Motion.
And a second?
Second.
Second.
Any comments or questions?
Dr.
Mr.
Tartaski, I have
Yeah,
a
go ahead.
question.
Sure.
This is really, I guess, directed to Mr. Berman, given what he said before, but I just want to come back to it because I think it's important given some of the questions earlier. The
Mhm.
language about power and authority, Mr. Berman, am I correct that comes from the legislature, that comes from the General Assembly when it drafted the school code? Am I right about that?
Yeah, I will say that I went back and looked at the proposed policy, and it is an amalgamation of essentially quotes directly from the school code at different points.
Mhm.
So for instance, let me pull it up here. So for instance, the first part where it has authority, the authority to establish, et cetera, it then goes on to it being a body corporate, which is directly from the school code. It's a quote directly from, I think it's the 200 section of the school code.
And Mr. Berman, I'm so sorry to interrupt. Just to clarify, the school code was drafted by the General Assembly, right?
Of course. I'm sorry. The school code is the Pennsylvania Public School Code of 1949 as amended by the state legislature and signed into law by the governor at that time and as amended.
Right. Fair enough.
Okay.
Thank you. I just wanted to clarify that point for the record and for the general public. Thank you.
Thank you.
Very good.
Are there any other comments or questions from the board? Okay. Ms. Michaels?
Mr. Bedard,
Aye.
Mr. DeFranco,
Aye.
Dr. Edlin,
Aye.
Mr. Lapidus,
Aye.
Mr. Needleman,
Aye.
Ms. Lipinski,
Aye.
Dr. Taratuski.
Aye. Okay. The next item, number 3, is policy 003, functions. The Board of School Directors approves the first reading of policy 003, functions, as recommended by PSBA. Is there a motion?
Motion.
And a second?
Second.
Any comments or questions? Okay. Ms. Michaels?
Mr. Bedard,
Aye.
Mr. DeFranco,
Aye.
Dr. Edlin,
Aye.
Mr. Lapidus,
Aye.
Mr. Needleman,
Aye.
Ms. Lipinski,
Aye.
Dr. Taratuski.
Aye. The next item, number 4, under policy, is policy 004, membership. The Board of School Directors approves the first reading of policy 004, membership, as recommended by PSBA. Is there a motion?
Motion.
And a second?
Second.
Any comments or questions? Ms. Michaels?
Mr. Bedard,
Aye.
Mr. DeFranco,
Aye.
Dr. Edlin,
Aye.
Mr. Lapidus,
Aye.
Mr. Needleman,
Aye.
Ms. Lipinski,
Aye.
Dr. Taratuski.
Aye. The next item, number 5, is policy 007, policy manual access. The Board of School Directors approves the first reading of policy 007, policy manual access, as recommended by PSBA. Is there a motion?
Motion.
And a second?
Second.
Any comments or questions? I want to clarify something for the public since we're on the last policy here, that these are first readings of the policy. And Dr. Yannicone, you can correct me if I'm wrong, but as they are first reading, this is an opportunity for the public to see the policy and to make comments on it before it's reviewed again at another board meeting and the final draft is approved by the board. So if you are viewing this meeting and you have access to the policies and review them and you have any questions or comments, you are welcome to reach out to the board or the administration regarding those. Okay. Are there any other comments? Okay, Ms. Michaels.
Mr. Bedard,
Aye.
Mr. DeFranco,
Aye.
Dr. Etlin,
Aye.
Mr. Lapidus,
Aye.
Mr. Needleman,
Aye.
Ms. Lipinski,
Aye.
Dr. Teretuski.
Aye. Okay. The next item under property is Goshen Mechanical Contractors, Inc. The Board of School Directors approves Goshen Mechanical Contractors, Inc. for the district-wide installation of Atmosair dielectric barrier bipolar ionization system under CoStar's contract number 008-616 in the amount of $78,999. Is there a motion?
Motion.
And a second?
Second.
Any comments or questions? Okay, Ms. Michaels?
Mr. Bedard,
Aye.
Mr. DeFranco,
Aye.
Dr. Etlin,
Aye.
Mr. Lapidus,
Aye.
Mr. Needleman,
Aye.
Ms. Lipinski,
Aye.
Dr. Teretuski.
Aye. Okay. At this time, there are no more items on the consent agenda. We will have time for public comment on non-agenda items. As we enter into the public comment period, I'd like to address a piece of misinformation that I may have heard during the earlier comment period, which is around vaccinations of students. I want to be very clear that the district does not provide any medical treatment to students, and this would include vaccinations. We strongly do encourage our families to vaccinate, as we do our staff and any eligible students, but at this time, that is not something that the district is offering, providing, or requiring. So I want to be clear about that. During public comment period, you are welcome to speak. And if you could state your name, where you live in the district. And again, I just want to reiterate that this is a comment period. If there's factual information about something that we can provide quickly to you, we will do that. If there are other questions that you have, you may direct those in writing to the board or to Dr. Yannicone. Okay. All right, Bernard Kling.
Can you hear me?
Yes, thanks.
Okay, my name is Bernard Kling. I'm from 1909 Sycamore Lane, and I'm a 53-year resident my whole life of Springfield Township. I have a comment a question with regard to the second step program that is being implemented. When looking at how this went into effect, and it goes under the nomenclature of social awareness, I'm going to call it critical race theory for our purposes. But it was obtained through a grant from the Bureau of Justice. And I said, what is the Bureau of Justice? And the Bureau of Justice is evidently a part of the Department of Justice, under the executive branch leadership of the President of the United States. I would just simply like to make the point that we all know, and I think we all agree, that the Constitution puts education in the hands of the state and therefore the localities after that. Since when did we go farming out our curriculum, particularly as it relates to social awareness, whatever that means, to the Department of Justice? Everyone seems to be very adherent to the code that is passed by the legislature, as it should, of Pennsylvania. But I know that nobody at the Department of Justice or a group is a law enforcement agency. And I wonder whether we would be having the same conversation, or if the grant came from the Department of Homeland Security. What do they know about our children? What do they know about our locality? And I'll leave it at that. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay. Madeline Watson.
Hi, yes, I'm here.
Okay.
Again. I would like to continue on what the previous parent just said. We all know that masks are ineffective. we choose to continue with the parade. We all know that vaccines they're not designed to prevent transmission. They're designed to attenuate the symptoms. They're 95% effective at attenuating the symptoms of that. It's extremely complex science. It's been oversimplified in the public. And in clinical trials, they expressly said they have no ability to prevent the transmission, but yet our children are forced to wear them that raise their CO2 levels to over 4,000 ppm. It's very dangerous. No one seems to agree that. They just, they want to label you a Trumpist or a this or a that. But everyone wanted to follow science until it didn't benefit them. So we get on and we get past and we get through all of this. Everyone knows masks don't work. Vaccines don't work. Vaccines, they enter your blood. They protect the mucosa that's in your throat, that's in your nose. They harm what's in your lungs. They can help you with the disease that's in your lungs, but they don't prevent transmission. And so you have our children suffering every single day, and it's abuse. And they wear these masks. They cannot see, they can't read, they have no idea whether someone's laughing, smiling at them. The cognitive skills have declined. The speech pathology of people have attested to that. Doctors, it goes around and around.
Mrs.
No
Watson,
one wants to listen to that.
Mrs. Watson,
No,
I'm sorry.
I can move on from that.
I'm just going to give you one more minute. That's all I was just going to say. There's quite a few people who want to speak. So I just wanted to give you another minute.
Okay, that's perfect. Okay, that's fine. So the vaccines and masks, they do not prevent transmission. You can look through DTaP, flu, COVID, any mRNA technology. That's not what it was designed to do. Okay, it's only designed to lessen the effects if you contract it. Okay. So now I would like to move on to the point where I have.
We have about a half a minute left.
That's fine. This school district has taken funds under the ESSR. They have taken funds for social and emotional learning, which is also critical race theory disguised in a bow. You are teaching my children, who are half black, half white, and descendants of Harriet Tubman, that they are oppressed, that their white mother, me, is the oppressor, and that their black father is the oppressed. You are segregating them. You are giving out books in libraries with sexually explicit things. You are dividing our students. And you are wrong. And I don't know how any liberal, I don't care what side you're on, liberal or Republican, this is absurd. It's so insane. It's so crazy.
Thank you, Mrs. Watson.
No one, if you actually read what is in what you took the funding for, you took millions of dollars
Ms. Watson,
in
thank you.
funding. You took millions of dollars.
Mrs. Watson, thank you very much. I'm sorry. We have quite a few people who want to speak, and I want to allow everyone to have that opportunity. Ms. Banks?
I'm sorry, Dr. Teretuski, before we move on, just
sure.
two points of clarification on behalf of the board. One is there is no critical race theory built into the curriculum at Springfield Township schools.
Thank you.
And that comment has come up twice. So I just want to make sure that that is not a takeaway of the meeting. Secondly, I reject any concept of abuse of our children, which is just a comment that can't be left on the table. Certainly putting masks on children is not constituting abuse. And I just want to say that for the record.
Thanks, Mr. Bedard. And I just want to remind everyone that we'd like to try to keep comments, please, to 3 minutes to allow everybody that wants to speak to do so. Okay. Ms. Banks?
Hi, thank you. Angelina Banks here. Or I had one question I had from another parent who was unable to be here for this meeting. She just wanted like a little clarification on the school lunch policy. She's doing the dual homeschooling program, and while the school is providing her books, they told her that there was going to be there's a policy change and they're not able to provide meals. Is there any other options for parents who aren't able to send their kids in who are getting support material from the schools about school lunch for their children?
Dr. Yannicone, I'm not sure if that I have the knowledge to answer that question.
Absolutely. Ms. Banks, if you would ask your friend to please contact my office tomorrow, we'll be happy to try to work through her questions about access to food. If she needs assistance, we can connect her to agencies in the area, if not our own food service, to make sure she has what she needs.
Okay, she did have emails with Susan Holman, and she was told that she didn't qualify for home meals for her four children.
Okay, if you would again have her contact my office, please.
Okay.
If necessary, I'm happy to connect her with our Director of Support Services
to
make sure that we can get her help if she needs it.
Wonderful, thank you very much. And then I just had one follow-up. I don't know if I missed it. Maybe it was the meeting. The last meeting, the August 3rd meeting, we voted on the health and safety plan for PDE, and their literature said that the plan had to be submitted by Friday, July 30th. The board voted on it August 3rd. Did they extend the deadline to submit the plan? I can't remember if you addressed that or not.
Dr. Yannicone?
Sure. So the plan was submitted on Friday, July 30th, I think it was, which was the deadline. We were permitted to submit the plan by the 30th without board signatures, provided we gave the date on which the plan would be approved. And then we would upload to the website the signed plan, which is on our website now and was since August 4th.
Right. Awesome. Thank you. I just needed a clarification on that. Thank you very much.
Sure.
Thank you, Angelina. Okay. Abby Ryan.
Hi, can you guys hear me?
Yes, I can. Thank you,
Awesome.
Abby.
So I just had a question. I know someone earlier was
I'm sorry. Before you go on, do you reside in the district?
Oh, sorry. I live in Flowertown, and I graduated from Springfield Township High School. I went to like all my school through Springfield. And I just had a question. I know someone earlier was like really concerned about vaccine stuff. For Springfield, I didn't see anything about vaccine requirements for the COVID vaccine. So I was just wondering if you guys could like clarify that if there is one. And then also just clarify that like kids still get all of the regular vaccines that are required for public school in Pennsylvania as well.
Yes.
Okay.
Thank you. Yes. And there is no requirement for students to be vaccinated to attend school.
Okay, cool. Just wanted to double check that because it seemed like a big concern for some people. Thank you.
Thank you, Abby. Stephanie Rebstock. Stephanie, you can unmute.
Hello, can you hear me?
Yes.
Hi, my name is Stephanie and I live in Orland. I have 3 boys and I am currently homeschooling. I homeschooled last year and I'm homeschooling again this year. I am a speech language pathologist with over 15 years experience. So I just kind of wanted to touch upon what Dr. Johnston said about a few things. She mentioned this holistic approach for our students, including the social well-being, the academics, things like that. I have to comment because this is our 3rd year of COVID schooling, and you are all aware of the negative impacts that it's had on our students, right? I mean, this is the first time ever in Springfield history that you've offered free enrichment programs over the summer. Is that correct?
I believe so, yes.
Okay. So again, as a speech pathologist, I just want to put it out there that speech and language is the building blocks for phonics, phonemic awareness, pragmatic language, that's social language skills, early literacy skills, and the masks inhibit that. I understand that you voted for full masking, and that is the reason I'm keeping my children home, because I'm not comfortable sending my children to school in a mask, so I'm homeschooling for that reason. But I think if you're really talking about a holistic approach, you need to address that issue.
Okay, thank you. Thank you, Stephanie. Okay. Lee Averly.
Wait.
Hello, can you hear me? Good evening.
Yes, we can. Thank you.
Hi. So I live in Jodham Road in Winmore. And it's actually a question on policy 002. I know I was sort of reading it as we were going through the meeting today, so I didn't have a chance to read it ahead of time. But I was interested into why it has ages rather than grades, based on Pennsylvania Senate Bill 664, where you have the students that could age out but will be extended, can actually extend for another year, so they will be 22. I just wonder why it stated ages and not grades in that policy.
I'm going to refer to Mr. Berman on that, actually. So policy 002.
It says ages 6 to 21.
Yeah.
But if there are children in the school district that would be coming under Pennsylvania Senate Bill 664, which children would obviously typically age out at 21 for special education, but obviously there's an extension for COVID, those children would be older than 21.
That's correct, but that's a provision right now that would not be incorporated into policy. But I'll let Mr. Berman comment on that.
So, I mean, I think that you've already summed up what the answer is, which is that you put into policy those things that are part of your normal practices, your normal operation. You wouldn't need to have that in your policy relating to what your normal practices are, since after all, after this year, you no longer have that authority to go beyond the age of 21. So a child will still age out in the year that they've turned 21. So child ages out, turns 21 in January, they finish in the June following that.
Okay. Lee, I'm not sure if that answered your question.
Yeah, no, it just seemed a bit odd that it stated ages rather than grades, I guess, but.
That is actually what the school code says. The school code calls for education from 6 to 21.
Correct, except of course, if the child graduates first, then your obligation to educate the child will end at that point as well.
Yes.
Okay, thank you.
Thanks, Lee. Carmen Lewis.
Hi, thank you for taking my comment. As this is a comment section, just a quick comment. I wanted to share how pleased and proud I was.
Can you just state where you, yes, we can. Can you
yes,
just state
yes,
where
yes.
you reside in the township? Yes, thanks.
Yeah, in Orland.
Okay.
Very pleased and very proud to learn when we were implementing masking for our students. And of course, then the state followed suit with mandatory masking for all students in the state. I feel like Springfield Township is leading the charge. That's why we live in this township. That's why we chose these schools. Springfield is considering the data, is considering the science, and takes actions without having to be told from on high. So I appreciate that we are doing the best given the data that we have currently. Thank you.
Thank you, Carmen. Tom Wexler.
Good evening. Can you hear me?
Yes, I can, Tom.
Fantastic. My name is Tom Wexler. I am a resident of Orland, a 2004 graduate of Springfield. I am also an employee, but I would like to add a comment tonight as my role as a resident and alumni of Springfield.
Okay.
My comment is I am really proud to see how over the past several years, not just in the pandemic, how Springfield has been incredibly supportive of the health and safety and overall well-being of all of its students. When I graduated, there were some additional services that that exist now, that if they were as thorough and in-depth, I think that would have made me even stronger as a graduate. And I'd like to say that I had an amazing education from Springfield. I truly appreciate all of these staff, the direction the school board has taken, not just during this pandemic, but even before that, with things such as helping ensure rights for trans students, that those students can advocate for themselves and what is best for them. Putting in safety plans in place to make sure that students are safe within the building and can focus on being students and learning and having a great time. So thank you to the school board. Thank you to the administration for everything you do that makes sure our students continue to grow and prosper. Thank you.
Thanks, Tom. Jeff Cornu?
Can you hear me?
Yes, we can, thanks.
Thank you. I just have two things real quick. There have been several comments made about critical race theory tonight. I'd like to, for the sake of transparency, I'd like to request that the board make the curriculums available to the parents, specifically any curriculum that covers social interactions, equity, and the second step program. And then secondly, I'd like to know what measure the board is going to use moving forward to address mask wearing. Currently, the state has mandated mask wearing, but when the state lifts the mandate, what measure will the board use to decide to move to a parental option for masks? I think it's important to give a clear definition on how this will be implemented. And that's all I have. Thank you.
Thank you, Jeff. Just by way of information, all of the curricula are available on our website. And if you have any specific questions or requests for curricula or curricular information, Dr. Damian Johnston can assist you and you can direct your questions to her. And then with regard to mask wearing, we consult every week with the Montgomery County Office of Public Health, who advises us on the requirements needed for mask wearing or any changes in that. So we'll continue to follow them and track the case percentages within our township and our county. Kimberly Brockmeyer. Kimberly? We can't hear you. I see that you're unmuted, but we can't hear you. Okay. Kimberly, you might need to try again, or I don't know if there's anything that we can do tech-wise to assist.
Dr. Taratowski, I would suggest her checking her microphone. Maybe
Okay.
move on to the next one and we'll give her a chance after she
Okay.
checks her microphone.
Okay. Kimberly, if you could check your mic and make sure that you're able to use that, and we'll be happy to call on you again. Stephanie Redstock.
Hi, can you hear me?
Yes, I can, Stephanie.
Hi,
Thanks.
sorry. Just a question to follow up from what I was saying before about how the masks inhibit all of these necessary skills for early literacy, phonics, phonemic awareness, speech and language, social communication. How is the school adapting how they're teaching phonics? I mean, as educators, I don't know the board's qualifications, so I don't know if you have any qualifications in the area of education. I know Dr. Yannicone, obviously, Dr. Johnson, and all the teachers do. So they know the importance of having the face visible for phonics lessons, for speech and language, for literacy lessons, but those do not work in isolation. So just having a mask off for a phonics lesson for 5 minutes, phonics is completely embedded in every aspect of school all day long. Same with social communication. So what kind of adaptations are being made in that area?
Stephanie, typically this is not a question and answer period. If you do have questions about how the curriculum is being implemented, you're welcome to direct those to the principal of the school. I would usually say the teacher, but I know your children are homeschooled, but you can certainly reach out to one of the elementary principals and they'll be happy to answer your question.
So is it, just to clarify, is it school by school or is it district wide? Like,
well, it would be school. We have 2 elementary schools. They do.
Yes, I know.
They do cover different grade levels. So
I know my oldest was in Enfield. My oldest was in Enfield for 2 years, so I'm aware of the structure of the schools. So it would be Enfield would operate differently with their phonics lessons, and Burden High would operate differently with their literacy classes,
based on the appropriate instructional strategies that are needed for each different grade. Yes, that would be the case. So I would, if you have a question, I would reach out to the school principal for that.
Okay.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you. Sure. Madeline Watson.
Yes, I'm here again. Stephanie just spoke. She's a speech pathologist. I can attest that my daughter suffered through kindergarten and first grade with severe emotional anxiety. She had hiccups every morning. She didn't want to go to school. She told me that she didn't think anyone liked her because she couldn't see them smile. She couldn't see their faces. She couldn't read the teacher's lips when they were moving. I ended up meeting Stephanie because of that. And the reason Stephanie's children are homeschooled is because your board is that incompetent. You're so incompetent that you cannot read science. You wanted to follow science because it justified you for a while. And now that it doesn't, you just make up arbitrary rules. And now our kids are to be muzzled and they're to have their CO2 levels rise. And they're not allowed to socialize and their grades are going down. Everyone is suffering, but you still choose to mask them. You don't have to. You do not have to take the grants that you did. You applied to get the SCR funding multiple times in millions and millions of dollars that you took. And under that bow was disguise of equitable training, which leads to CRT, which leads to SEL, which everybody thinks is great. It's like, oh, why shouldn't we learn about cultures and this and that? It's like, oh, well, that's great.
Mrs. Watson, I know that you have
I know you want to
spoken
cut me off
times.
right now. You want
No,
to
I know
cut
you've
me
spoken
off
several
because you
times
know that what I'm
because we
going
have
to
other
say
folks.
is the truth.
Okay, we have other people who would like to speak.
No, you're
and
going to cut me off right now because you know what I'm going to say is what you don't want people to hear, that you're teaching our children.
Mrs. Watson?
We've seen this go on across the country. You're teaching our children.
Okay, you have another minute.
Yes, okay, thank you. You are teaching our children that white people, whitey, is oppressing Black people. I'm white. My husband's Black, okay? You're teaching our children that whitey is oppressing them. You're teaching them that they shouldn't dream so big. You're teaching them that they shouldn't have such expectations because systemically they are suppressed. The percentage of minority children in this district is very low, but yet for some reason
we have
you
about 20 more
found it
seconds.
necessary to take $2 million just this quarter in funding, and in that you agreed to mask the children and adopt.
I'm sorry, Mrs. Watson.
You
I need to
agreed
thank you
to
very
mask
much
the
for your
children,
comments.
and you agreed to.
Thank you.
Dr.
Mrs. Miller?
Tartusky, I'm
Yes.
sorry, may I just throw in a quick comment? So I've been, first of all, the patience of Job, I think, is a great phrase. I think that it needs to be made clear that if someone is to address the board, they need to do it respectfully. And most people do, and we appreciate that. But if someone can't muster the decorum to talk to people politely, whether they agree or disagree with our view, I wonder if they may need to rethink addressing the board. That's my personal view. On a slightly more personal note, and I'm going to say this, I'm not going to be popular for this. If someone is unhappy, there are private schools, and God bless them. They can choose whatever private school they want. Ms. Watson, I would strongly suggest you do that. Thank you.
If there are any questions or concerns about curriculum, you may certainly speak with Dr. Johnston and direct any of your questions to her about what is being taught in the district. As I said, the curriculum is on the website. Tracy Miller?
Yes, hi, can you hear me?
Yes, I can.
Hi, my name's Tracy Miller. I live in Erdenheim. And just to repeat what the gentleman just said, I think that there are other options for parents that are, if they're not happy with the current policies, they should homeschool or choose a private school. I want to thank superintendent and the board for requiring masks at this time. I'm an occupational therapist. I work in pediatrics. I specialize in early childhood development. I've been working with kids that are ages 2 to ages 5 for the past 15 years. And the past couple years, most of them have done very well wearing masks. I think we're losing sight of the fact that we are in a global pandemic and we need to protect lives. And that needs to come first right now. So I appreciate the board. I appreciate their patience. I'm fully supportive of the requirements of wearing a mask and all the other safety measures that are being put in place right now. That's it. Thank you.
Thank you, Tracy. Carrie Masari?
Hi, can you hear me?
Yes, we can.
Hi, thank you. Carrie Masari, I reside in Winmore. And as a parent of a child who is both immune compromised and utilizes therapy services, including speech therapy, I applaud and personally thank you for creating a safe and effective environment for our children, not only to return to school, but also to continue to thrive academically and socially. I'm sorry that you've had to deal with all of the uptight individuals on this call, but I appreciate all of the efforts that you've put forth. Thank you.
Thank you, Carrie. Bernard Kling?
Yes, I would just like to make a comment, piggybacking on Mr. Lapidus's comments. I can't cite it verbatim, but I believe it's case law 1964 Sullivan versus the New York Times, and in effect says that you can be vigorous, robust, caustic, pejorative word, at public debates such as this. I have heard no one cursing, anything of that nature. So the fact is, when a mom is on, or a dad or any parent or concerned citizen is on here and you don't like the tone of their voice, well, that's something you're going to have to put up with. Now, I'm sorry, that is not something, and you can ask the solicitor there if that is in fact the case. The fact that you don't like agitation because of your decisions or anything is completely irrelevant. Okay, she has a constitutional right to speak the way she spoke, and to tell her, a concerned parent with real legitimate concerns, that they can take their kids, taxpayers, and go to another school is completely out of line. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Kling. Angela Giordano. Angela, you can unmute.
Hi, I'm sorry. Can you hear me?
Yes, thank you.
Oh, great. Okay. I just wanted to introduce myself. I'm a brand new resident over on Hemlock Road in Flowertown. Thank you. I have 3 small children, 2 going into 1st grade and 1 going to 3rd. And I just had a general comment. The board meeting agenda was available during this call via the boarddocs.com, but are they posted online in advance? And if so, how much warning do you give to review that information?
The board agenda, to my understanding, is generally published the Friday before the board meeting. Definitely the Monday before the board meeting, so it's at least 24 hours. It is on board docs. When you go to the district website and you go to board agendas, there is a button that will take you to board docs, and all of the agenda and all of the attachments are there.
Okay. All right. And just in the future, so when we call in, this is a clearly open space to have comments, communication, and of course, if we differ in opinions, this is a good place to bring our comments in a professional and clear way to discuss options other than having to change our children out of the school district and go to a private school. So I just wanted to ask that question. This is my first meeting, and the comment maybe twice before mine was that if you do not agree with our board's decision that you should choose to homeschool or private school, there's pretty much no wiggle room in communication, or is this a free area to speak in a professional way and communicate our different opinions?
So let me be clear about the board meetings and public comment. Public comment period is an opportunity for the board to hear ideas or comments, opinions from the public. It generally is not a back and forth discussion or problem solving session. If you have particular questions about something that's happening in school, about your child, if you have questions about how something's being implemented in the district, you would contact the appropriate person. First off, if it's your child, then it would be the teacher and or the principal if there was something about the school or programming in the school that you're concerned about. If you're not sure who to direct your question to, you can always email the superintendent and she will direct your question to the appropriate person or find out how you can get your question answered. The board does have 4 committees: policy, finance, property, and academic affairs. And those committee meetings are generally posted on our website. If a meeting is planned at the time of this board meeting, then the meeting will be announced at the board meeting at the end, and the public is welcome to attend those board meetings, committee meetings also.
Okay, so I will actively be on the next couple, calls. I'm excited to be in the district.
Great.
I was just kind of shocked to hear that comment from a board member, which we just moved to this district, saying that the option, if we disagree, with the school district standings is to private school or homeschool our children. So I didn't know if that's a commonplace. This is my first meeting, so I don't know if the school board normally recommends moving outside of the school district or not. So I just wanted to make that comment, loud and heard. I am very excited to have my children start in the school district, and I really hope that they have a great experience. So I just was kind of shocked to hear that comment.
Mm-hmm. It's always,
Dr.
Angela,
Karatowski.
it's always our intention as a board and as a district to work with our families. That's why I directed you to kind of work up the chain. If you have a question about your child's program, we want you to direct that to the person that can most easily ask your question. We would like to certainly foster civil discourse around topics that we differ on opinions. So we want to make an opportunity for that to happen. And it often will happen at, as I said, at board meetings or in direct communication with our staff. That's really the best way for us to resolve any questions or concerns that parents may have. Okay.
Dr. Tartowski,
Great,
may
thank you.
I I know I see the frustration. I just want to clarify for Ms. Giordano. So no, I would not typically suggest that someone take their kids elsewhere. However, there are people who have a horrible experience with a certain provider. It seems like Miss Watson is one of them. And if I go to Target and every time I go to Target, I have a horrible experience, I'd stop going to Target. That's just an example. Miss Watson has launched accusations at this board that are they're not controversial. They're just lies and accusations. And she's obviously out to get the board. So it's not civil discourse. It's one person having a vendetta against the entire board. And hence my suggestion. No, I do not normally say that, but I think in her case, that could certainly be a consideration.
Jim Daly?
I'm sorry, can you hear me, Karen?
Yes, I can, Jim. Thanks. Just state where you are for the minutes. Thanks.
Sure, thank you. Jim Daly, Pen Oak Road, Flowertown. I believe earlier one of the gentlemen asked a question with respect to.
Oh, we lost you. Jim, I'm sorry, we lost you somehow.
Hello.
You're back again.
I clicked the wrong button.
That's okay.
Ah, there you go.
Technology is fun.
I'll tell you. The curriculum, a gentleman asked about the curriculum and it was said all the curriculum's online.
Mm-hmm.
I know you don't answer questions, but if you could generally tell the residents, can you point to where the Spartan Pride Time curriculum is located on the website? It's about 2.5 hours worth of curriculum a week. And I can't find it. And maybe if it's a few clicks in or somewhere, I just don't seem to be able to locate it.
I'll ask either Dr. Yannicone or Dr. Johnston, if she's still with us, to comment on that.
Sorry, I was finding my unmute button, Mr. Daly. I have to double check that the Spartan Pride Time, last year, you may or may not have been aware, there were questions at the beginning of the year about our Spartan Pride Time specific to Erdenheim curriculum. And at the time, it was a new program and it wasn't written. It was in the process of being written. And so we had a goal that that the board directed for us to have that curriculum completed by June. That curriculum has been completed and should be available on the website under the curriculum page under Erdenheim. But if not, I'll ask Dr. Johnston to make sure that that goes up within the next week.
And if I could, I apologize for the questions, but it's a big part of the day of the students. The curriculum that's being posted, is it the materials themselves or is it the topics?
It's both. So what's happening in the schools is that there's a unit at a time, and they do include second step materials as well as materials that are created by our teachers. They include resources that are provided by our school librarian, as well as resources that are part of the second step curriculum. And each unit is focused and tied to the core goals in the school that Dr. McLaurin provides to the community in his weekly updates. The teachers also provide that information on a weekly basis when they notify parents, here's what next week looks like. Here's what we're going to be studying in ELA and in math and science, social studies, and in Spartan Pride time. And so that's how the curriculum, the parents are notified of the curriculum. But we did do some tightening up and filling out of the curriculum over the last year. And Dr. Johnson, you might want to clarify anything that I may have not mentioned that you think is important for Mr. Daly and the community to know.
Thank you, Dr. Yannicone. That was completed as a part of a number of curriculum projects this summer. I'm finishing the final typo review, just making sure that everything is spelled correctly and periods are where they belong. And so I have 4 different units, including the social emotional curriculum from Erdenheim, the Spartan Pride time, to post in the next week or so, once we get through our opening week with our staff. So it's on.
So it's not posted.
Any day now. It's not. You were correct, Mr. Daly. It is not there, but it will be.
Okay, understood. And what? Last question, I promise. That'll be posted a few weeks before the actual lesson, so the parents can understand what is the lesson and the materials, whether video presentation, written or whatnot, or the books that are being proposed.
Yes, I'm sorry, Mr. Daly, I was unmuting. I apologize.
That's okay.
Yeah, so what we've asked through the principals is that the teachers would provide that information to parents as part of their regular updates. And so when the teachers, each classroom teacher provides an update to the parents in their classroom, and they will tell them next week or over the next 3 weeks, we'll be working on the following. And so yes, parents are given advance notice of the curriculum. An example of that would be, our 5th grade puberty lesson, where in the first year we provided a letter from Dr. McLaurin, explained what was happening in that lesson, provided a link to the video, and then parents were able to opt in or out if they wanted to make a personal choice. I think it's important for families to know that while we believe in the curriculum that we're delivering, and we believe we are not only following state standards, but meeting the needs of our students academically, socially, emotionally, behaviorally. However, parents always have the right to ask a question and to go to the principal if you are uncomfortable with a particular lesson and to ask for an alternative. You always have that ability. If you are concerned, you are the parents, we want to partner with you. And it's important to us that parents have confidence in our curriculum. So if you know of a particular lesson with which you are uncomfortable, the first thing we would ask you to do is contact the building principal, have a conversation with the principal about that. And then if you really feel that that lesson is not appropriate for your child, then we can provide an alternative lesson.
Then based on that, my final comment will be that I am aware of that process to reach out to the principal of the school. And that's where I learned that there is a committee that comes up with the curriculum and recommendations for the teachers. My suggestion to the board would be, one, that committee be, if it's an ad hoc committee, that be publicized, or maybe possibly even the Zoom of what that meeting is so people can see that meeting. 2, that committee's recommended books, materials, and whatnot are posted so that folks know the universal set of materials that will be presented to their child. So they have a better understanding if they can opt out, or they like to opt out, or they want the child to participate. And then 3, that the teacher who would be teaching those lessons provide at least over at least 2 weeks notice to the parents, because you don't want to ask to be taking your child out of something when you don't know what the curriculum is yet. You're leaving no option but to do that until you know what the actual lesson plan is. Not just the topic, not just the theme, but the actual materials. And that would be my comment. Thank you.
Thanks, Jim. Kelly King.
Can you hear me okay?
Yes, I can. Thanks.
Thank you. I just wanted to thank the board, and I want to acknowledge that I've been in and out of this meeting due to internet connection issues, and I'm sure others have had the same. But I did feel compelled to speak out in relation to social emotional learning and some of the curricula that was mentioned and some of the hostility surrounding that curricula. I'm an administrator in a local school district. My sole job is to train educators on social emotional learning curricula, including Second Step. And so I'm actually going to quote a white paper on Second Step, which is accessible to everyone. For those listening, if you choose to investigate, it's secondstep.org. Decades of research show the positive effects of universal classroom-based SEL programs for children. There's also broad recognition that the benefits are even greater when children experience SEL throughout their day across home settings, school and out of school time and environments, and throughout developmental stages. When implemented with a coordinated community-wide approach, SEL can build stronger communities and support inclusive, equitable learning. I would like to encourage the parents that feel that SEL is somehow related to critical race theory, which is absurd. And I would like to encourage them to check the resources that are available directly on Second Step. You can see the curricula. You can also see some parent and home-based curricula that might be beneficial for people to implement in their own homes. I also wanted to thank the board. Apologize if my connection is a little dicey here. We're dealing with some flooding, as I'm sure many other families are, but thank you for your time and your dedication to our students and our families.
Thank you, Kelly. Mary Ellen Reeves.
Mary Ellen Reeves, North Hills. Okay, any questions regarding Second Step? There's not been one bit of criticism regarding the curriculum. I'd like to address the last caller. It is a question about the curriculum and what is being taught. No one has even mentioned one single thing that is insulting or disparaging in any way. We're simply trying to find out what is being taught. I like to go on the record for saying this because I find it offensive that anyone would assume or make any assumptions that anyone has made any criticism here. That's all I have to say. Thank you.
Thank you, Mary Ellen. And Mrs. Watson, I see that you are raising your hand. With respect, we will allow that you make a fourth comment. It's out of the ordinary that we would do this, but please keep your comment brief, and this will be your final comment.
Yes, can you hear me?
Yes.
You know, I heard previous to Mary Ellen who spoke. My major concerns are, you know, I don't want our district to adopt anything that is radical in either direction. I have a hard time conveying my thoughts like through speech. So sometimes I have no filter. I say too much. You know, I have a lot of history. My family is multiracial. There's a lot of things going on, and you know, I don't believe in oppression of any kind. I don't believe in CRT. I don't believe in masking. I just, it's not effective. It's proven. People applaud it, but you know, it's scientifically it doesn't work. I think that, you know, what I want most is I want to know exactly what my children are learning and be able to opt in or opt out of it. I don't want my kids to get jabs with a vaccine at school without my permission. I don't want my kids to be taught that, because of the amount of melanin in their skin, that they're victims, because they're not victims. I don't want them to be taught that I'm an oppressor because my melanin is, all white. I don't want any of this. I don't want any divisiveness. And there were grants that were given by the Pennsylvania Department of Education that the Springfield Township applied for. And within those grants, you guys agreed to mask the children, and you also agreed to participate in equity curriculum. And within that is divisiveness.
Okay. Thank you, Mrs. Watson. We're at the end of a 3-minute time limit, and this is the 4th time that you've spoken. We do appreciate everyone's comments this evening. It is the responsibility and privilege of the board to listen to comments. And again, we have 2 comment periods during board meetings. One is at the beginning to speak on agenda items, and one at the end for non-agenda items. I thank everybody who's been on the call. We don't have any future meeting dates set at this point, and so we will adjourn the meeting this evening. Thank you again, and be safe this evening.